Hello, everyone, and welcome to Davy Dak Fight Round 5. Oh, why is that? No, well, Joy Boy's thing just disappeared, but I'll fix that in a second. But obviously, I'm here with a very special guest with none other than Joy Boy Theories, and most of you probably know him from, obviously, his One Piece videos and stuff like that. But he's also the author of The Booms, and, he'll tell you more about it. But I also have my own copy of The Booms here. And I'm only about 20% through, so nobody put any spoilers in the chat. But I'm looking forward to reading the rest. So JB, man, thank you for stopping in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, appreciate you having me. It's a great chapter to talk and discuss about. I'm excited for it. Just incredible. I didn't even know he had the book, to be honest with you. So that's an incredible surprise. But yeah, if for anybody out there, check it out, read it. Let me know what you think, but we're here to talk about One Piece, so let's do it.
Absolutely. And I promise everyone, right before the stream started, I set it up and the Discord thing was working, and now his little bubble disappeared. So just give me a second to figure out what that's about, because it was definitely we were literally just talking about how fixing things is so horrible. Now is it gonna work?
I muted myself. Is that what's
no, that's wait. Okay, you're back. All right, I fixed it. Sorry about that, everyone. All right, so I know a lot of you want to start talking about chapter 1078, which I can't blame you at all, but where I actually want to start today is talking about what I know some of your guys' favorite theories of mine, which is Pluton is a mole. And the reason why I want to start this is because anyone who's been watching the channel for a while has probably heard me mention the fact that Pluton is a mole actually started from Joy Boy Theories channel. So Joy Boy used to do these videos where he would respond to comments, basically, and what happened was he had a comment where someone basically put the picture of the mole from Gadatsu's cover story and was like, hey, I think this thing is going to be important, you should look into it. And then JB, I forget what you said, but it wasn't like I'm going to immediately go do it. So I was like, well, I'm going to go do it. Like, that seems pretty crazy. And that cascaded down the whole plot line of Pluton as a mole. That was where everything started. That's the only reason the theory's here today. So I'm super excited to have Joy Boy here because he doesn't even know that. I mentioned a little bit before the stream. So I know you don't know the whole theory, Joy Boy, but I guess what are your initial thoughts on Pluton being a mole, or maybe to a greater extent, all the ancient weapons being living creatures? How do you feel about that?
We've talked about this so much. Oda's a fan of three. He pairs things in three, and in whatever way sounds best to him, pretty much. So three people, or a person, an animal, and an object, or three animals. All of that works really well for me, to be honest with you. And I think I've heard theories about Pluton being an object which digs. So not necessarily, and I don't think an actual mole, but something like that with similar abilities to that. I've definitely heard something like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so I guess to give you a little bit of backdrop, so the way that I see the mole thing is, they said that Pluton was built in Water 7, so that tells you there should be a mechanical component somewhere, right? But also when we were in Wano, Sukiyaki said Pluton is sleeping beneath us. And then also, if you go through like some of the verbiage whenever we saw the Pluton blueprints, and also Frankie, after he learned that Pluton was in Wano, they said, oh, it's the nastiest monster in the history of shipmaking. Can this thing be built? And in Wano, he's like, is that thing real? So it gives a vibe of like it's an abomination, right? But it could be living because it's sleeping. So what I surmise is it's going to be like Laboon, right? Like it's an animal that has components in it that you can ride in, and so it is it is a ship.
It also reminds me of Zunisha a bit as well. There's theories, I think Morge was one of the ones that championed this one, but Zunisha is Pluton. Obviously it's not true anymore, but it seems like kind of similar to that idea as well.
Yes,
it's like an animal. You can use the same panels and argue it in kind of the same way.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like I said, the funny part is it all started with that mole that was on one of your videos, and like I started with it, did a bunch of theory research and made videos and all that, and then Parvision messaged me one time and was like, dude, I think you missed like one of the most obvious, most important things. And I know. Oh, shout out to Par. I saw Par in the chat earlier, and he's like, "Bro, the helmet." And
he's probably so annoyed with me. Every time he messages me about a theory, I'm just like, "Bro, this is crazy." Every time.
Oh, real quick, Joy Boy, I have your volume on max. Can you move your mic just closer to your mouth a little bit, just like an inch? I don't know if that's possible. You're in like the low yellow.
How do I sound now?
Everyone, for me, you're in the low yellow, which I'm like in the high yellow. So it might just maybe if I lower mine, then everyone can increase the volume. That might actually be.
I don't know.
That might.
What does it sound like? Let us know. Do I sound right or?
Let's see if I can get our. Here, I'm gonna. I know I have your Discord volume on 200, so I know I can't. I'm gonna move my mic away from my voice. There we go. Okay, I think if everyone adjusts their volume, it should be okay because I'm in the low yellow now. So hopefully it's all right. It's just a little low. They can hear you. It's just, anyways. Going back to the mole thing, it's funny because Parvision's like, dude, you missed the most obvious thing, and it's the helmet. So in the picture that whoever commented that on your video, in that exact picture, you can see that the helmet the mole is wearing has Mount Fuji with a traditional Japanese sun behind it. So it's like, how does this mole from Alabasta area have a Mount Fuji symbol, right? Like,
'cause he's dug everywhere.
Yeah, and maybe his family, knows, like maybe there's a connection between being under Wano and like being a mole, right? Like there's some kind of ancient, I don't even know if they're like descendants per se, but
the way that works has always been really intriguing to me. Like they were digging on this random island somewhere and then suddenly came up in the middle of Alabasta. It's like, man, these things could dig across the world if they wanted to, like straight through.
And that's where the theory comes from, right? Like think about it, Pluton's the god of the underworld, right? And I mean, you mentioned earlier there's been theories about like something digging underground, so I'm sure that's where that theory came from. But like if you could sail around the seas by digging underground, that's way better than sailing on the water, right? Like you don't have to deal with the weather. There's no one who's even going to see you. It's just it's probably quicker because you can just make shortcuts through the ground, right? So there's like no downsides other than maybe like lava, but that if you have
nah,
we don't
hockey good enough.
and actually that's another good connection to this too. Is Pluton's supposed to be able to destroy islands. And if you look at Wano, one potential way to destroy islands would be like volcanic eruptions, right? Like that, it didn't destroy Wano, but it was a massive explosion, right? Like could maybe destroy a smaller island. And there's lava, throughout the whole planet. So if you have something that can dig into that lava, you can trigger volcanic eruptions under the island, and with a single blast, blow up an island, right? So, So I'm glad you like it. It's funny that or I guess I don't know if everyone knows this, but a lot of you mentioned it to me. But Joy Boy mentioned Lafro Tale on a stream a couple weeks ago, and that's actually how we got connected. And I think it's kind of funny that I brought up Pluton as a mole first, but definitely wanted to get your opinions on that. But now I do want to move into Lafro Tale, and I know you watched it and you talked about it a little bit.
Incredible, dude.
Thank you, man. So I want to get your thoughts. What do you think about the One Piece being an afro? Is that something you vibe with? You think that's appropriate, or?
Well, so your theory was incredible. It doesn't mean that I agree with every small aspect of it, for sure. But I kind of think the One Piece is as many things as narrowing it down is not necessarily the right course of action, because I think it could end up being a lot of things. And just like Oda says, it's not the friends that we made along the way. I do think it's the friends that we made along the way, along with a buttload of treasure and knowledge and various individual things as well. But the thing which absolutely blew me away about the theory was the beginning of it, where you went back to Long Ring Longland, awakening of the Gomu Gomu no Mi. Dude, at that point I was like, nah. That absolutely freaking sold me, and that's my headcanon. It's so weird. Obviously, maybe people who are watching don't understand this, but there's when someone comes up with a theory, it's like there's some amount of ownership there, or at least I like to feel that way. You want to be shout out or whatever, and that's straight up my headcanon now. With Luffy's Devil Fruit awakening Long Ring Longland, it's like, oh man, I don't want to mention it because
Hey, dude, mention it all you want. And while we're on the topic, I want to give a quick shout out to Den Kushi, who originally set me on that path. In that video, I forgot to I forgot to include a mention to him, but I did another Lafro Tale 2, and I mentioned that, and also mentioned him 1,000 other times. So I just want to give him credit too, because he started me on that path. Like, I mean, he talked a lot about that, then I kind of like took it to the next level, but he also deserves credit for that. Speaking on this topic,
right.
But dude,
the fact that it's the shape of a crown and all that, dude, man, that was. I'd have to rewatch it for some of the specifics of it, but
okay,
and the editing quality as well, man. Like, I hadn't seen any videos from you, but you came out of the gate firing. You edit better than I do.
Hey, man, that means a lot to hear, man. It definitely takes a long time. I'm getting a lot faster, but that's definitely, I did videos. I wouldn't say professionally, but that was my full-time job for like about a year before I did YouTube. I did a lot of marketing stuff, and I was pretty much responsible for making videos and all that, so I kind of learned on the fly. And also,
it looked good.
Thank you. And I also made Call of Duty montages, when I was a kid. I was all about that. So it's so I have a little bit of experience.
That's the gateway.
Yes. Oh, dude, for everyone, man. Call of Duty montage. They're still up there too. Maybe I should like share those or make them like members only videos or something. But yeah, man, the Long Ring Longland stuff to me is that, like, again, with all the Afro stuff, it all started, well, I shouldn't say it all started, but it pretty much started with the Long Ring Longland stuff, because obviously that's where Afro Luffy was born, or whatever you want to call it. And it's and his tattoo kind of looks like Gear 5th. It's like his skull on fire type thing, right? And you definitely don't have to, but I did do Lafro Tale 2, and there's like a ton of changes. The main things are Long Ring Longland still a big factor, and the Afro still a factor, but a lot of it has also been changed around, and like a lot more context. So if you did want to watch, I'd recommend going to that one, because there's a lot. It makes even more sense in the first one.
And in Wano, they were also talking about a fire god as well. And if you look at Rock's symbol, it kind of looks like a skull on fire as well.
Yes, exactly.
Side thoughts.
And tying that to like the Afro Luffy stuff, like, isn't it? Like, what's with the skull on fire? Like that to me looks like a Gear 5th, skull or whatever, right? And I don't know what you think about Rox's powers, but I don't know if that's a hint that I don't think he had the gum fruit for sure, but is that a hint that, I don't know, like he had some other fruit that also has flaming, whatever,
right.
head.
Well, another big theory as well is that Luffy's the sun god, right, or his fruit, sun god fruit. There might be some parallels to that, like Blackbeard. I could see Blackbeard awakening and being like a dark version of the same thing as well, if you want to give Rox that fruit instead. So.
Yes, and this actually leads to a whole other thing where, Parvision and I, it always comes back to Parvision. Parvision and I have talked a lot about
Parvision.
It's that mind rope, man. And by the way, I just want to give a quick shout out just because I saw it. Terrible TJ, thank you for that super chat, bro. Hey YouTube, Joy Boy here, let's go. Hey, that's iconic.
I refuse.
Wait, what is it? Hey, YouTube, Joy Boy here. And wait, then you also say, if you haven't read chapter whatever, I will be spoiling it, right? That's how it always starts.
Chapter 1078 is out. If you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so, because I will be spoiling it. Yeah.
Bro, that's how you know I've watched.
Same thing I've said for 7 years, bro.
Yeah, bro. It's crazy that even I know it. Like as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh man, like the whole spiel is just playing in my head, like right now.
No, turn it off.
Yeah. But hey, I do appreciate, obviously, I never watched your video. Like I always read the chapter the second it came out, so I never got spoiled, but I always did appreciate that you said that. But going back to some of the rocks and whatever stuff, it all goes back to Parvision, because Parvision and I have talked a lot about shadows before, and I'm not saying that he has that Rocks had Moria's fruit, but I wonder if, because darkness and shadows are like right next to each other, like almost the same thing to a degree, right? And so part of me's also been wondering if that's a part in this, because also, like, shadows make armies, and like you can take a shadow from someone and they can't go in the sun, like it's kind of OP. So I've always been wondering if there's some connection here between the darkness stuff and the shadow stuff, and maybe that's what Rox was doing, right? Like Rox was tied into all the taboos of the world and whatnot. And if you look after Marineford, they specifically were trying to hunt down Moria, and he escaped because like Absalom made him invisible or something.
A random thought that I've had for a long time. I've mentioned this to various degrees, but it's always interesting to me the fruits which comprise life.
Yep.
So like Big Mom's fruit is the soul, right? So you obviously need the soul to live. She can extract soul from people and give them to objects or containers, and then they have life. But then there's an aspect of the body as well. It feels like Law's fruit is kind of manipulating. Generally, it's a little bit more complicated than that, obviously. But you have the body, and then the less talked about element of that is Mori and Shadows, right? Because Shadows is part of life as well. And I just kind of wonder, like, if Oda has a great plan for that, with like those three fruits in particular.
Yep.
Actually, being everything that you need to create,
Yep, and something else that I think is really interesting, which this is like I always do this is like a little bit of a foreshadow for a potential future theory, but I've always something I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. So recently, I guess something I've been thinking about a lot are Viver cards. And I don't want to spoil. It's so funny because like I know someone's doing a video on this. I don't want to spoil it, but I'll shout it out whenever it's out. But my part of what I'm taking from it is Viver cards. Think about how weird Viver cards are. Like you get someone's hair or nails, and it can like track their soul, basically. You know what I'm saying? Like because like we're talking about shadows and souls, like in Law, or maybe even Buggy to a degree, like these fruits that have to do with bodies. I feel like something that's just not talked about enough is the fact that Viver cards are like you take a part of someone's body and it has like their soul in it. Like remember Nami in Whole Cake, like they had Big Mom's soul because they took some of her hair. And then also remember I said the One Piece is an afro, which is like made of hair, so that's like another crazy thing. So gotta plug it. So that's something else I think is not talked about a lot, is like I don't know, there's something weird going on. It's almost like real quick, and you've talked a lot about Ghost Piece, right? And maybe we can get into that a little bit. It still could happen in a different format. I still preach it. I think it's going to happen, but it's like I wonder if this line between life and death is going to get really skewed in One Piece eventually, right? Because like we're saying right here, like you can take part of someone's body, but it represents their soul, but then their shadow can also represent the body because you can like warp the body shape with the shadow. Sure. So there's a lot of like just weird stuff I feel like that Oda, like who knows where it's going to go, I guess. There's a lot of life and death kind of ideas that he hasn't fully covered.
I mean, yeah. So first off, I want to preface this. I think Ghost Piece is dead. I loved the theory at the time. I think so, but it doesn't matter. We'll see what happens. But some of the elements of that theory absolutely, are still in play. Because I mean, the real basis of Ghost Piece, if you break it down, besides what was specifically happening in Wano, is One Piece is a hero's journey. That's like if there's lots of like superfluous isn't the right word, but there's Oda is inspired by a lot of stories always, and you can see those influences from time to time. But when it comes to the story itself, the backbone of it, you can think like Gulliver's Travels, and you can think Hero's Journey. The combination of those two things. And so in a hero's journey, hero travels to the underworld. That is the trope. All the books that talk about it usually have steps where this occurs. So if we have something like that in One Piece, would they travel to the land of the dead, or the land of the dead, somehow blurs the land of the living? That would be no surprise whatsoever, and absolutely incredible if it happened.
And here's where I think it's going to happen. I guess I'm always plugging stuff. So I do have a video that kind of covers this, but Brook, when he said that he visited the underworld, like we know it's a place, right? And whenever he died, whenever he died originally and his soul came back, we saw it like come down from the sun. Like there was like a place that it was coming from. Like it's not like the soul left his body and just like, did a 180 and turned back around. Like it came from somewhere else. And I think this is also going to tie into one of the recent Egghead chapters where they talked about the 21 grams of soul that leaves your body when you die or whatever. That was like kind of like an offhand comment that I'm pretty sure ties to Hogback, because they said it was a doctor in the West and he's from the West Blue. And so to me, I that's why like whenever I keep saying Ghost Piece, I know originally that was like for Wano and I was all about it, but I do think we're going to get that in some form eventually, like on maybe a bigger scale. Maybe not, maybe it's because of Brook's fruit, but I also think it could be, and this is what the video that I'm referencing is really about, is I think maybe when he goes to fight the Blackbeard pirates, one of them are the person he fights, which I think is going to be Vasco Shot. But I think that could be a play where like Blackbeard's gonna, try releasing all those 21 grams of soul or whatever, right? They're almost, the way I think of them is like soul zombies. I know that sounds like so weird, but like if you look at the zombies from Thriller Bark, how you put a shadow and like they weren't themselves, but they were kind of themselves. I think we might get something that's the very same thing, but with all those 21 grams of soul that go somewhere when you die, right? We don't know where they go, but Brooke showed us they go somewhere. So there is a place, and I'm wondering, if those are going to come back into play. So I don't think Roger's going to get resurrected, but I think you could almost think of it of the soul of his shadow is going to get put into something or something like that. That's kind of what I see.
There's enough in the story to know that souls of ancestors takes you back to Skypiea and the trees. Even with the end of Wano, you could see that as foreshadowing if you wanted to. Of look, we can communicate with the dead. So,
yep.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's so funny because I think even last week when I brought up Ghost Piece, Par was like, "Wait, what is this? I haven't heard of this." And it's like, well, that was from a different time, but
yeah, me and Randy Troy were on that, man. But
yep.
I don't know. The end of Wano is a whole nother conversation. You wonder if maybe that was in the cards at one point in time. I personally wonder that.
I mean, if you want to talk about Wano a little bit, we can do that because I have a feeling we're on a similar wavelength. Where it feels like it ended too quick. There's a lot that should have been in there that wasn't.
I don't want to irritate people because I know some people are really sensitive to any sort of possible criticism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's best to head this off with Ichiro Oda is an absolute workhorse. He's a workhorse and he's a genius. Yep. But when you're doing the same thing every week for 22 years, look, I couldn't even get close to that number ever. But it just makes sense that at some point in time, it's the you're ready to end it, right? And we've seen this. There's context clues. This is a theory on its own.
Yeah.
But him and the editors have been trying to speed up the story. That's something that he's been pretty vocal about in interviews and such like that. That he talks about how all the arcs end up being much longer than he anticipated, and I think that has a lot to do with his writing style. Quite honestly, it's beginning, it's just basically he's trying to tell the best story that he possibly can, and there's a lot of things to manage, like for instance making sure that there's an interesting cliffhanger at the end of each chapter, make sure that you introduce some element that keeps people hooked, and all the things that he ends up adding to the story he has to close off by the end, which balloons every single arc.
Yes.
So I think he had hoped to move past Wano sooner, and it ended up being I think it was still the longest arc in all of One Piece anyway. But I think that there was possibly more there. And even with the recent stuff that have come out from SBS's, like he's going into Zoro's backstory and Tama was Kurozumi, and all that stuff, it clearly had a place in the story when Oda envisioned it. And he didn't get there, and it may be for the best. He might have realized like this doesn't add enough or it complicates it or whatever. But just it really speaks to the difficulty that he had at the end of the arc. So I really felt like Gear 5th was he had been working towards that for decades, maybe. And he got to that point in time and was ready to move on. Is how I feel. And the editors were ready to move on. And again, they've talked about how length is a barrier to entry. It just is, right? So there's real pressure to make sure that the story actually has an end. So not getting in specifics, that's pretty much my thoughts.
Yeah, I echo all that, and I'm glad because I did a Wano analysis, and I pretty much started it originally saying like, all right, like we can all say Oda's great, and like Wano is still very good. Like it's this is not a situation where we're saying Wano is bad, like no, or One Piece is bad, like or Oda is bad, like none of that. It's like you're saying is, and I think the SBS illustrates very well is that there was obviously more planned, but whether it's timing, whether it's pressure from publishers, whether it's just Oda himself wanting to get it done, whatever it is, I think it's pretty evident that they cut it short, like on purpose, like they had to, right? Like whatever the pressure is, and I think a couple examples of that are like Zoro gave up Shusui on the condition he could go see Ryuma's grave, and we didn't see that, right? And so for me, and that's like that, maybe Oda could show it to us later, but for me, that's like that to me, that's not even like an expectation thing. That's like like that I mean, he gave up his favorite sword. You know, like, I mean, so to me, there are definitely things where like Oda had to skip over it for the sake of time, or I mean, Wano was already 4 years, you know. So
plus he's Ryuma's descendant. At no point in time did he, you know, he deserved the sword. It was literally given to him.
Yep.
You know, so it's just one of those things that, you know, it just fell off. Well, a big one that I've talked about for quite a long time is Yamato as a character. I think. So my opinion about Wano is Wano was an incredible arc from, you know, the first chapter of it all the way up until Gear 5th and maybe even the defeat of Kaido. It was great. It just needed to tie off some of the things that it set up to feel.
Yes.
You know, and you know, with Yamato, it's just one of those examples of you know, clearly it was either meant to be a red herring or Yamato was supposed to join the crew. One of those two things. But you know, if you compare to you know what he did with in Carrot as well with Vivi and Robin and Alabasta, man, Vivi and Robin and Alabasta were incredible. Where we thought that Vivi was going to join the crew, and he comes out with this Omega speech for her, and you know, as an author, I think I can speak to this at least somewhat. You know, writing stories is all about managing expectations. You know, and you've got to create those expectations on purpose. So when everyone thinks that Vivi is going to join the crew, right? When people join the crew, it's a hype thing. Yep. You get excited for it. You know, you're ready for someone to join. So Vivi doesn't join. It's a great moment. He went all out on that speech, and then on top of that, replaced Vivi with somebody unexpected. So you got everything that you wanted from that and more. That's how much that delivered. And then you go to the end of Wano, right? Yamato says that you know she's going to join. He's going to join, and that creates expectation just the same. People are excited for a new Nakama, period. And then we get to the moment, makes his speech, but it's not really about joining the crew or not, and Yamato's in the background and doesn't really get a moment. And, you know, Oda comes up with an excuse for her to stay, and it makes sense, but it's just not satisfying.
Yes.
So,
and
it just needed more time.
I agree. And the way that the Yamato stuff was set up, because, like, I mean, I wasn't really partial, like, you know, whatever. I mean, I would love to get a new crew member, but, you know, I can also see reasons for her to stay. Like, I was kind of neither here nor there. But I will say that I don't even know if upset's the right word. I don't know if I cared that much, but it definitely felt weird to see, like, one chapter, Yamato's like, I'm definitely going. Like, we see, like, her, like, she's, like, on top of the Wano castle or whatever. I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but but she's like, I'm joining, I'm gonna go do this. And then the very next chapter, never mind. It's like, oh, well, all right. Like, I know Oda always, you know, like we have mismatching, or like he, I don't want to say like misses expectations, but he sets something up and does something better, like you said before, right? He usually so like in that situation, if she said I want to go, and then I'm not saying this would have been better, but some other important person steps up and is like, no, you need to protect here, I'm gonna go. And you know, like, okay, we still get the crew member. Yes, exactly. It could have been a learning moment for her where she wanted to go, but if she really wants to be Odin, it's like, you're not strong enough, you know, to do that yet, or so, whatever the reasoning is. But like you're saying, we didn't get that.
Or simply Momonosuke is not yet capable to be the guardian of Wano.
Yes.
You know, he's you know, regardless of whether he's been aged up and he's a dragon, he's still young and inexperienced, and he has room to grow. And somebody needs to stay behind because Wano is in danger. Right. You know, and then you can gather that from the story itself, but it just never became a satisfying moment. It's more of like a mystery that's dropped off the face of the planet, and I guess we're gonna, you know, maybe get in the anime.
Yes.
You know, expound upon it a little bit.
Exactly. So. And I see a comment from Lightning Blitz. You said Wano should have never had so many samurai. It's funny you say that because, like, I somewhat agree with that sentiment, but it's the reason why is because just Wano's, I feel like for instance, the Mimawar Ragumi in Wano were like never touched on, and then also or like basically they were set up, and then Hyogoro fought him and beat him immediately, and then they never came back into play at all. And then we're talking now about the end of Wano, and Yamato needs to protect Wano and all that. I feel like not that I was like dying for this moment, but that could have been another thing where like the samurai army does something like, hey, Yamato, you can go. He has 5,000, whatever samurai. Like we're gonna rebuild the army, because like that was the whole thing. They were like, oh, like remember like Kizaru like wasn't allowed to go to Wano originally because Sakazuki was like, oh, there's so many samurai, we don't know what their military force is like. And then once we get there, the military force, which was the Miwaragumi, pretty much got like no diffed, and then there was like no samurai army after that. So I'm like, bro, so y'all like I don't. There's just so many like weird things where it's just, I don't know, like Wano, it wasn't what I expected, like not in a bad way, right? It's just like there were like some things I was like, I can't wait to get there and see all the strong samurai. Well, and there wasn't really a lot,
Well, and just so that we're not totally negative here, I don't want people to have the wrong impression. What Oda does on a consistent basis, especially where the story is at right now, is totally unprecedented. Find a story out there that introduces 30 characters and attempts to flesh them out and make them perform important roles in a given arc. I mean, it's so difficult to manage. As the cast of One Piece grows, it gets even harder, and like I said, it comes back to how I think that Oda writes a story, where you constantly need some sort of mystery, some exciting character reveal, something, and he places those in there at midpoints just to keep people along. But then they have to do something. And it's the level of ambition is up there.
Yeah, I think the thing for me, and I'm glad you keep saying like we don't want to make it seem like we're like shitting on Wano, because the thing is that the reason we're even talking about it is that Oda has set the bar so high for himself, and I mean even other stories we read at this point, because we're so spoiled at this point with how great the story. I mean, there's a lot of great stories, but obviously we're all here because we love One Piece, and I think that's part of it. Is like we're so used to like Michael Jordan, and whenever we get like a step below that, like even like Kawhi Leonard or like another guy who's still great, it's like we feel like he's like, man, I don't want to like be super. I'm like thinking of a bunch of players that aren't that bad. I don't want to make fun of them, but it's like when we get something that's still like a 9 out of 10, we feel like it's not even close to that, because it's not the 10 out of 10 that we're always used to. So
exactly.
But what you said something about how like we always want a mystery, and I want to parlay off that and ask you, I guess first off, or just generally, what do you think's going to happen with Big Mom and Kaido? Do you think they're dead? Do you think they're going to come back in an important way, or what do you think? What's Oda doing with that?
So I think Big Mom for sure is coming back. Just from the dialogue, I can't remember the exact chapter number. I think it was one of the ones with Law and Pudding. And Blackbeard at the beginning of Egghead.
10, or 64, something like that. Anyways,
it doesn't matter. I'm sure people know.
Yeah.
But there's just a way that Pudding phrased it. If Big Mom is dead, or it just reads to me like a clue that she's gonna turn up again. In what state? How fit of a fighter is she going to be? I'm not too sure. How long is what role is she going to play? Again, I'm not too sure, but I feel confident that Big Mom is going to return. And the fact that we didn't actually, I mean, technically, I guess we saw like the shadows of them potentially disappear, but we there's no smoking gun, no body like we saw with Whitebeard or Ace.
Right.
So I think Big Mom's back. I think Kaido should be back. But and this is just sort of my mindset here, especially with the end of Wano. I understand that Oda is under pressure to move the story along. So where he sees, or his editors see, a potential to cut something that will speed the story significantly that they think is not necessary, I think more often than not they might take that route. Of course, I say that, and Egghead has extended much longer than I would have ever predicted. So maybe they learn something. This is a constantly evolving deal, but I do think Kaido is a character that most people have accepted as dead, and if he stayed dead, it wouldn't be the worst thing. But that's kind of like Big Mom. I would love if he returned. It just kind of depends on what he does, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. I agree with all that, and I think the thing with Big Mom too is there's like a lot of her past, right? Like I mean, it doesn't have to happen, but I feel like it was set up for her to eventually learn what happened with the orphans and Mother Carmel and all that. And I think to a greater degree. I don't know how you feel about this, but I don't think either of the old Yonko awakened during Wano, or at least like it wasn't confirmed, right? Which I think is weird in and of itself. If they did awaken, that Oda wouldn't tell us. And so to me,
for instance,
what's that?
Yeah, Kaido is the big one. You know, the beast pirates. He should have been the first one that we saw awakened.
And and King and Queen also, like any of the beast pirates. And I know it's like not everyone has to awaken, right? But it's, to me, it's like, I mean, we saw the 3 captains that came to attack Kaido all awaken, but we don't see the Yonko who've been around for 60 years, 50, however old they are. They didn't awaken, right? That felt kind of weird to me, but I think it's going to be because they haven't been pushed far enough, or maybe like zones actually have to die first or something to awaken, or whatever it is, right? But I think that alone is a good reason to think that they're going to come back, because they finally got pushed far enough to awaken, right? But now, where have they been this whole time? I don't know, right?
Recovering.
And it's been weeks, so like maybe, yes, that's the only thing I can. Or whenever they went down in the lava, like we presume they got blown up and maybe spewed out of the volcano, but maybe they saw Pluton.
This is the beautiful thing about One Piece, is if Oda wills it, he can make it happen, because it's so freaking absurd. It's like anything is potentially an option. That's how I feel about it. So this works both in creative ways, like, oh look, they were underground and saw Pluton, or Kaido simply died because or he was never awakened because he wasn't a fit for the fruit. For instance, or didn't get pushed to that level because he's just a freak by nature. Same with Big Mom; they're both kind of cut from the same cloth in that way. So
yes, yeah, it is funny. Like Oda almost like put him away like in a box. It was like, all right, I'm just gonna bring him back when I feel like it. Like when everything's set up, then I can bring him back. Which, I mean, you as a writer, you can probably, maybe you can see through the lines a little bit that's maybe what he was doing. Like we were talking earlier about how he like kind of wanted to end Wano. It seems like he wanted to get past this and end the story a little bit sooner and whatever. So it's almost like he like tucked him in a box and was like, all right, I'll get back to these guys when I have time. Like I can, like the way
options is a big deal.
Yes. Yes,
because it just the potential of things, like almost perfect design is when you can do something with a character or you don't, and it works either way.
Yes,
and
yes,
you can just kind of let your imagination run wild, and if it comes up with something awesome, you can put it in there, and if you don't, then they don't come back, and it's that simple.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because like it does feel empty, and like I say empty kind of loosely. Maybe personally, it feels a little empty because I was hoping for them to come back or at least awaken, whatever it is. But I think it could set up for like an amazing comeback because Oda can do it when the time is right, like you're saying. Like he can not do it or do it as long as he wants. But when he finally does, it's probably going to be crazy good, right?
Yeah, and also Smoothie, man. I would love to see Smoothie in action in the manga.
Have you heard? Have you heard the idea that she is gonna like squeeze the lava out of Big Mom, or she may have already done that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about, man. Like infinite options available to him because One Piece is absurd.
Yep, but I do agree with you. I want to see Smoothie do something too, and I have a theory that how a kid went into Big Mom's territory and got the poneglyph rubbing, and we don't know how exactly. Well, I think Smoothie might have the hots for kid. That's my theory on that.
Do I want to know the logic behind this?
I don't know if there is logic other than him just being a rock star guy, right? Like that's his thing, right? Like punk everything and like whatever. He's like a rock star.
She's like a fangirl,
Yes, exactly.
That One Direction.
That's my guess. Is like she was like that's because like we've seen Cracker fight both Luffy and like Urouge a little bit, and we saw Snack fight Urouge, Cracker fought Urouge and Luffy, and then obviously Katakuri fight Luffy. So it's like Smoothie had to have done something, and maybe we'll come to find out that her and Kid whatever that like the Kid situation is where she got involved, and I don't know, but I want to see her do something too.
I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, hey, it's definitely a shot in the dark, but I just was like, man, how else can Kid do that? Like I don't know how else. Like he would have to be let in. Was like my starting point. Was like
hyping up Kid is something that
Well, why don't we move into that a little bit? Because I think Kid's about to get absolutely rocked by Shanks. What are your expectations for Elbaf right now?
Oh man, this is tough. This is an interesting thing about theories in general. Some people predict based on what the story is telling them, or but a lot of the times when I make theories, it's about what I think works. just narratively. What can Oda do with this to create a powerful moment? Sometimes it leads me astray because not everything is intended to be, as good as it, the millions of people that follow One Piece can imagine. But I don't know. I really have no freaking idea about Shanks and Kid, how to make that, because I don't want Kid to be absolutely rocked because he's Luffy's rival. I guess in certain contexts it could work, but but I also don't think that he can beat Shanks. I mean, Shanks is this top tier in game villain. Yes, they are villain, quote, Yonko.
Right.
But it's what do you do there? What is the moment that he's trying to create? Is Kid going to be subservient to Shanks? I would really frustrate me if he defeated Shanks. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect. Does Kid get rocked again? And the moral of the story is his willpower. He keeps standing despite everything going wrong always. Or is that just the end to his plot line? That doesn't feel like it would satisfy me, but it's a thought that occurs to me if we're trying to move the story along. So, and I don't have a great answer for you.
Okay, well, it's so funny because Pard literally just messaged Dak's about to drop his dope Kid resolution theory, so I do have a thought on it. But I want to echo something you said there, where it's like basically what I think what you're saying is, it's whatever this moment is, it can't just be Kid gets rocked and he leaves or he dies and that's it, right? There's obviously something very important that's going to happen here, or something that's going to matter for the future, right? Whatever this is, or it's going to tie back to something in the past, right? Something that's important, and that ties into what Parvision was talking about, because that's kind of where I started, and what I came up with was, the Giants hate Big Mom, and Kid just beat Big Mom, so the Giants probably like Kid, right? Or they probably don't want him to die, because it's hey, Shanks, please don't kill that guy. He beat Big Mom for us. And then Shanks obviously likes the Giants, so maybe it's a situation where maybe Kid does enough to earn the right to fight Shanks because he didn't even see him last time, so maybe he gets a little bit of boost, maybe his railgun is equal to Ben Beckman's World War II rifle or something, right? Something, whatever. He earns the right to see Shanks, and then, but Shanks beats him, and then Shanks is well, I said I'd kill you, but the Giants don't want me to, and I really like them, so what am I going to do with you? And then what I can see happening is Shanks does something to help Luffy. So what he does, he's all right, Kid, I'm going to take all your rubbings, but leave you with the one that Luffy doesn't have yet, and you have to wait here because Luffy's coming here, and then you two can fight, and whoever wins gets all four, and then can fight me at Lafro Tale, basically, right? So it sets up a thing.
I like it.
Yeah, because then there's a reason why Kid doesn't die, there's a reason why he would stay, and why he would actually want to fight Luffy, and why Luffy might... Luffy probably won't want to fight him right away because he didn't want to after the end of Wano either. But once he learns that the rubbing is there, and if he learns Shanks set this up, whoever wins gets to go fight him, Luffy's gonna be oh, okay. He's gonna take it way more serious, I think. So,
The interesting thing here, is you need one of two things. You either need Kid to fight roughly on par with Shanks first, I think, enough for it to be an actual contest of some sort, which, depending on how you feel about that, you may like or dislike it. Or maybe Shanks goes full Luffy route, it's look, you're not yet ready for me, but there's a dude that's coming here that,
yes.
If you defeat Luffy, then that's what you need, and so it becomes almost like from chapter 1 where Shanks put the straw hat on Luffy's head, something similar here with Kid.
Yep. And that's the red hair connection too, right? And I also think, what was I going to say? So basically, it could be a situation too where Shanks maybe wants to test Luffy in a way. So for example, we learned in Film Red that Shanks can cancel observation haki, right? Which is crazy. So maybe he teaches that to Kid, and is as a way to help Luffy, right? All right, Kid, you're really weak. The only way you're going to be able to beat Luffy is if you can do something like this, and teaches him as a means to help Luffy get a little bit further, right? To take that Conqueror stuff to the next level, because Kid has Conquerors, but he didn't learn advanced Conquerors like Luffy did against Kaido, right? He kind of sucks at hockey, to be honest. So I could see where Shanks is all right, man, you gotta fix this, and so he helps him for the sole purpose. He's probably thinking it'll help Luffy, and if he does beat Luffy, well, I can still beat Kid. I don't need to worry. If I teach Kid this little trick, I'm still gonna beat him. It doesn't matter.
I really like there's a derivatives to that theory as well. Shanks meeting with the Gorosei, the pirate that he warned them about was actually Luffy, and it was for the purpose of setting them against Luffy so Luffy could grow, basically. And it's same idea, essentially where evil Shanks, but not really evil, just because he knows that Roger became the best because he didn't shirk any dangers that the world provided. He embraced it. So, maybe Shanks, encourages that a bit.
Yep. Yeah, I get. Ways. Yeah, and like you're saying, there's a lot of ways that you could take just the core idea of like Shank doesn't want to kill Kid and he wants to use him, and you could like extrapolate that, a bunch of different ways too. So, yeah, that's what I hope to see. I guess it's maybe like my own desire, but I really don't want to see Kid. Not that I hate Kid. If anything, I kind of like him, but it's just Shanks has been set up the whole story to be like not the main villain, but like the main. I don't even want to say adversary, but like the strongest dude that we're gonna face until the end, pretty much, right? Like until we face like the world government or whatever.
It's Luffy's true "I've arrived" moment when he gives the hat back to Shanks, or he's supposed to. So that's like, it's a marker of true endgame. Like
yes. Yeah, and
there's no way.
Yeah, and to see Kid. Like he couldn't even really hurt Kaido, right? And like he needed help to beat Big Mom, which like I mean he could maybe do something, but like Shanks should be way better is all. So I definitely hope we see a resolution where it has nothing to do with Shanks, getting beat or anything close to it. But
yeah, like I said, that's a good idea. I've been really struggling with something. I'm not totally in love with it, but I'm not in love with. Kid gets massacred or defeats Shanks either. I think either of those two things happen, and it'll be fun times in the community.
Yeah, for sure.
I think.
For sure. Real quick, I want to get into a couple super chats. Mr. Bushido, we're just about to talk about Egghead, so I'll get to your first one in just a second. But friend Harper, you super chatted $5 and said, "I want Kid to be a problem at the very least. Kid can polarize Shanks' ship as a prank." Now that'd be kind of funny if he, or even if he like messed with their log poses or something. Like if they have all the rubbings, they can probably find Lafro Tale anyway. But it would be kind of funny if he messed up their like navigation ability. That's always been my theory for Kid, is that his magnetism has let him navigate way easier than anyone else. So he's been traveling the whole world, like he's probably been in the New World and Grand Line multiple times because he's like, he can just go around really quickly. But maybe he's already been the Lodestar, but I don't know if I don't know. I would like to see that, something with his fruit. And Mr. Bushido, you also super chatted another €5 and said it will end with Kid replacing Shanks as Yonko. I think Shiki, Big Mom, and Kaido will be on Beehive and fight Garp. Now the second part, I like what you're saying. Now I don't see Kid replacing Shanks as a Yonko. I can't see Shanks lose unless Shanks didn't lose and was like, "Hey Kid, I don't want the title anymore. Like I'm gonna go become Pirate King. You can be an emperor. I don't care about
3D chess."
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like that's the only way that I can see it where like it would make sense, is if he's just like, I don't care anymore.
I think Shanks has to find the One Piece. That's what his objective is. He set out so his story is going to culminate in Lafro Tale.
Yep. Do you think there's a chance we get like a I know people have brought up a Davy back fight, but I don't even know if it needs to be that. But do you think we're gonna get like a maybe even like a Whitebeard versus Roger type scenario between Shanks and Luffy, and then building off of that, do you think it could get interrupted where other Yonko crews also show up? Like, do you think all 4 crews could show up there?
Yeah. Well, I kind of see the end game being really hectic. It's the culmination of the entire story, so I think all the factions need to be there. I think it's gonna be Lafro Tale. I'm not really a big fan of the Davy back fight idea. I think Shanks needs to be a legitimate opponent. Could it look like Whitebeard and Roger? Absolutely, it could.
Yeah.
But I would prefer if the fight was interrupted by people who actually, want Luffy to die. As opposed to like a friendly duel.
I agree, because also like only one fight in that duel or in a Davy back fight is a fight, right? And so like it would be kind of pointless to me, because we all know that if it was a Davy back fight, the way it's going to end is with Luffy and Shanks fighting 1v1 to win the whole Davy back fight, right? Like there's no way that it wouldn't end that way, right? Just like it did with Foxy and Luffy, like obviously. So that's my problem with it, is like you might as well just fight, because that's what's going to happen. Right. So what I want to see with the Davy back fight is actually us do one with the Cross Guild, right? Because I know a lot of people have brought this up before, but we already beat all these villains, so we don't really have to see a fight again. But the one villain in the Cross Guild that we haven't seen be defeated yet is Mihawk. And so it could be a scenario where it's Davy back, but Mihawk and Zoro fight in the last round as opposed to the captain. So then it's like, it actually matters, right? Like, then it's a big deal, because we could realistically lose a round of the Davy back to the Cross Guild, like, for sure. And then it would all come down to like Zoro has to beat Mihawk for Luffy to become the Pirate King, right? Like, it sets up that scenario. So it's, I like the stakes.
I'm just trying to imagine playing games at this stage in the story, and it is tough. So that's kind of how I feel about Davy back in general. I much prefer like a tournament, fighting, but that doesn't make sense to me either. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not a big fan of the theory currently, but anything can happen.
Yeah, it would definitely need to be forced. Like, the way I think about it is like the Cross Guild have a hostage of some sort, and they're like, hey, Straw Hats, we know we can't beat you in a real fight. It's definitely, the Straw Hats would need to be leveraged into it. I definitely don't want to see a Foxy scenario where it's like, hey, let's do a Davy back, and Luffy's like, all right, and it's just like why, dude, why? Like, we can just fight, like, we already beat all them, they're weak, like, why do this stupid stuff? So I do agree. There needs to be if it is going to happen, I want to see a narrative kind of reason for it.
Exactly. I think it actually worked really well as a movie, to be honest with you. Around Pirate Island, some sort of climactic One Piece movie where you can spend time to just play games, and then it gets heavy at the end.
Yes. And I mean, maybe we can talk about this more at the end, but man, I really hope once One Piece is over, we get so many movies of like big events, like the Ed War, for example, like, is always something I always think of. I think so too. It's just, that's how you're going to keep the money train coming,
And we'll see. We'll see if it's a One Piece: The Next Generations.
Yeah, man, I really hope not, man. I hope not. There's so much in the story that like, you could just go in the past. You know what I mean? Like, dude,
past would be hype as shit, dude.
I'll watch a movie about Roger finding his crew members, bro. I'll watch a 5-hour movie about that. Like, I have no problem. Like, there's so much meat on the bone. So, got another super chat real quick from Mr. Bushido again, €5. He just said, shout out to you, Joy Boy. You and Tekken got me back into One Piece after 4 kids. P.S. Shanks joins Cross Guild. He has to find Laugh Tale with Buggy. Well,
I mean, yeah, there's something there.
I mean, I definitely think Shanks and Buggy will both make it to Laugh Tale. I'll say that much. Buggy, I think, I want to see Captain John's treasure map take him to Laugh Tale or something like that. Like, Buggy always falls upwards, right? So I want to see him just get really lucky with it. And then also One Piece and Chill super chatted $2, said, my personal timestamp, don't mind this. Well, hey, I won't mind it, but I appreciate you nonetheless. And earlier, Mr. Bushido super chatted €2 and said, will Zoro get to ask Vegapunk, oh, sorry, just moved. Will Zoro get to ask Vegapunk whatever he wanted to ask? So this is going to take us into some Egghead discussion, because obviously that was what Chapter 1078 was all about. But I guess first I want to talk about the super chat a little bit. What do you think is up with Zoro's question at the beginning, if you remember that when he's like, we want a favor?
I tweeted about this in Ardor, Library of Ohara. Totally owned me. Is basically
really?
How that went down. Yeah. So the translation is difficult. Most of the time, the official release is announced, so I assume that you read the scans as well. But I read the scans first, and then I sometimes come back and catch up on the official chapters.
Yep.
I used to do it weekly when I did the talking about the official release. But yeah, anyway, so DB translated Zoro's line in a very particular way, which makes it definitely reads as more important than if you read it literally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so note here, TCB, the people that actually make that are essentially professionals, right? They're very good at their jobs. And so Japanese to English is just difficult because you can translate things in multiple ways. It has multiple different meanings. Like, for instance, pronouns. They don't include pronouns in Japanese, so it's not I or we. By context, you kind of just figure it out. But it is also a normal thing that when reading Japanese, they leave ambiguous on purpose because it can be foreshadowing or it can be a mystery. But yeah, so Zoro's line is just a weird one. if you read it literally, it doesn't seem as important, but ECB read it in a particular way, which suggested that Zoro might have been interested in something for himself, which is they used I pronouns rather than we pronouns. I'd need the translation in front of me just to read it out, but I think what the conclusion Arter came to is, basically do what we say, and
oh wow.
And, yeah, rather than I have a request for you, it's like you will do what we request of you, something to that effect.
Interesting. So could it maybe mean...
might not be a mystery.
Okay, so like it may not mean even that there is like a favor they're trying to figure out. It could just mean like we're the bosses here. Like you're not telling us what to do. Is that kind of the vibe? I got you. Because it can be a mystery, but it may not be. So don't if the arc ends and we don't get anything, you can consider it a translation error. I got you. Because I do remember the official saying like we wanted to ask you a question or something to that. But I remember it was a we, like it was something about the Straw Hats, not Zoro specifically.
Yeah.
And the vibe the thing I've been kind of running with since then is that they wanted to cure the smile fruits in Wano. Right, they didn't know how, like, because we just learned in SBS 105 that Chopper wasn't able to do that, which I just dropped a Chopper video and I talked a little bit about how I really wish we would have at least seen him try, just, even if he fails, I would have loved to just see him be like, dang, we really need to save these people. But anyways, maybe that's what it is.
It's just another one of those things about Wano that just didn't feel entirely resolved, which is Zoro made a connection with the people of Ebisu, they're smiling, and Yasu, and it creates a thought that Zoro was pretty pissed off about it.
Exactly.
And so we left the arc, nothing was really done about it, and you're talking to the dude who's literally perfected devil fruits, which is those people ate imperfect ones. So if anyone might have insight as to how to rectify it, Vegapunk would. So I had the same thought as you initially when I read that, and if that's what it turns out to be, then it would work as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a good answer. Like that would like make me feel like it carried the weight that it originally felt like it had, even though it may have been translated wrong. But I guess I want to get into chapter 1078, and I just want to get your reaction to the reveal, man. What do you think about York, and what do you think about just all the things around it? Does it make sense? Where do you see this going? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is it's been a tough review to make. I still haven't uploaded this, so you guys are getting my thoughts here first. I'm also, I understand it's like so hard sometimes to convey how you feel about something, and people get it accurately. The York reveal, I think, is good. It's a good reveal. I think that it makes sense. Yep. There's been clues dropped that you have the greed or the desire Vegapunk. She's sitting on the pod all day. I'd be thinking, and scheming when I'm, so it works.
Yep.
I do have a little bit of an issue with the supposedly lazy character. She's like sleeping all the time. That she's the one that's scheming in the background. I'm not too sure if that checks out, but I think the reveal is good. It just isn't great. And that may be exactly what Oda intended. Like an example that I'll give you, it goes back to Water 7. York being the traitor is like if we got reveals of CP9, but it wasn't Lucci and it wasn't Kaku, it was just Bluno.
Yes.
And a lot of people are comparing it to Kandro. It's I don't know if you follow My Hero Academia or not, but I did theories about that back in the day as well.
Okay.
And there was a traitor of UA, and I predicted the Invisible Girl, and it's just perfect, right? It's perfect because she's invisible, out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
The character that you see interact with people less and just see generally. So that's a normal concept. Same thing with Kandro's. Kandro, probably of the samurai, was the one that stood out the least. And then the same with the Vegapunks here. York is the one that stands out the least. You can do that kind of reveal. But when it comes to something like Kandro, I thought it was a million times better because we had literally 200 chapters of being with him. With Egghead, obviously, it just started. And we've seen, maybe like 12 panels of York in total. And you just don't have the same amount of time to plant seeds of I don't know, to get invested in the character. So that's why I go back to the Water 7 example, and it's just like Bluno was the traitor, Bluno was CP9, and not Rob Lucci and Kaku. And it's the Rob Lucci and Kaku part of that for me puts that one on a much higher level, just because those were the characters that stood out to me, that I cared about at the time, and that were cool. So it's good. It's just it didn't reach that level, but that's sometimes how it works. It's not everything is meant to be taken to the best possible version of it. It's just not always the case. So that's how I feel about York. It makes sense. It's there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think that it lived up to what a lot of people hoped it could be. And in a sense, it's kind of taking the easy out of needing to do anything really cool.
I'm 100% with you. It's like it makes sense. I have like no issues with it. It's just kind of like you said, we haven't had a lot of time to really meet any of the Vegapunks. We really don't know their personalities that well. Like, we kind of have an idea, but we don't have any like real emotional connection yet or anything like that. Or like whenever we got to the Scabbard Trader, it was kind of at that point where we knew him all well enough where it's like, man, I mean, we didn't know him that well, but it was like, man, whichever one this is, it's gonna blow us away. Like, we know enough about all of them where we can't really say for sure. I mean, shout out to Marco, the One Piece theorist, for getting it right. But anyways, I'm with you. It's whichever one it was, other than maybe Shaka, because I know a lot of people wanted to see that, but pretty much everyone else I would have probably felt roughly the same. It's like, okay, well, like, let's see where this goes, because it's like I figured it was one of them, but I will say that something that I think it was you on your stream yesterday. It always comes back to Par Vision, but I think he was saying, him and Sai were basically saying, one interesting thought about this is, York does make a lot of sense also because, like, she is the one that, like, goes to the bathroom for them, and, like, that's probably the place where there's no cameras. So I thought that was kind of funny, because that's probably how she would have ever contacted the Celestial Dragons. There's
I have a question for you. I have a question for you. So my understanding about how Punk Records work is that at the end of the day, Punk Records accumulates all their experiences and share them with everyone else. So, and that was my impression. Now, that doesn't work though if someone's literally been calling the government and during the this whole time. How does that make sense to you? Like, where am I off?
That's been my question this whole time. The between Punk Records and just the fact that for 3 months they've been going outside and like nobody's seen the sea beast attacking people and nobody's seen bodies get pulled inside, and and whenever York goes to update the info, that doesn't go in there. Like, I don't know. I feel like Oda might have to explain it a little more, or maybe that's what's going to come up next, right? Like, because to me there's a lot of, it's almost to me like, remember when they called Stussy and asked for help? We didn't know it was Stussy at the time, but they called for help, and Stussy was like, oh, I've been waiting for this answer, but she was like right next to Kaku in Lucci, which, like, I know, just like we got to suspend disbelief a little bit, like, whatever. But it's, to me, it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, like right now that doesn't seem to line up as well as I'm used to for One Piece stuff, I guess. So yeah, I don't know how Punk Records, like, the way I thought it works doesn't seem to be the way it works. Now, can York like upload only the information she wants? You know what I mean? Or maybe she had a hologram update. I don't know.
I hope Punk Records stays relevant in some capacity or becomes something, and we still have time to do that. But that could answer all of our questions for us as well.
Well, let me hit you with a big theory I've been kind of brewing in the back of my mind for a while. What if everything happening right now is the One Piece history repeating itself? Like this Punk Records situation, how Vegapunk was like, I want everyone to hook up to the same brain and all this stuff, and we'd all be connected, blah, blah, blah. Well, what if this is like a mini version of what happened in the Void Century? So I know Parvision has a video that talks about this a little bit as well, or a lot of it, or not necessarily repeating itself part, but just there is another brain or something somewhere. And like, so what if this is almost like One Piece repeating itself? Because we even have the Gorosei coming. Like, this seems to be the start of the big war, right? So what if Punk Records is almost like a, I mean, there's probably like a literary term for it, but a parallel, I guess, for what happened in the past. Like, what if Emu is like, the personification of a perfected Punk Records type thing, right? Or like, going back to Parvision again, like a Klabauterman type idea also, right? Because like obviously what Vegapunk's doing, like all this research and like how much information he's gathered, it's almost like he knows so much, which they pretty much said this, he knows so much now that they have to take him out, right? Like he's so close to knowing everything, and it's so to me I get some vibes like, okay, Vegapunk's like hitting like a critical level of information, you know what I mean? And like maybe that's kind of what, like, and the world government doesn't want to be challenged because that's what they have, right? Like that's why they've been leading this whole time, is they have like a brain that they're feeding off of that tells them almost how the future works, right? Like Odin knew the future when he went to Lafro Tale, right? Somehow, so like he knew in 20 years specific stuff was happening.
Yeah, there's also powers here that are relevant as well with Madame Charlie as well. That you know, she's obviously not connected that we know of to some things. So some future sight powers just exist by nature, probably related to hockey in some form. But no, Oda does that consistently throughout the story. You know, where events are repeating themselves. Like you can parallel Luffy and Roger, right? They're you know, maybe not exactly the same all the time, but you know, history repeats is, you know, that's a common trope in you know, real life, but you know, other stories as well. So it wouldn't surprise me. What we know is that the ancient kingdom was advanced, more advanced even than Egghead. So if Egghead has something here, then we can presume the ancient kingdom had as well, and at some point it went horribly wrong. So you know, could it be? Absolutely. And you know, we'll see. I know Parvision, he's talked a little bit about like the moon and such like that. Would be off the freaking wall.
Yep, Joy Boy Records. Yep, I love that. And shoot, what was I gonna say? I had a great point on the tip of my tongue. I know it's like right at the end. Right at the end, you mentioned Parvision. I was like, oh, now I'm thrown up. Man, it was such a good point though.
Records, history repeating.
Man, I know it'll come back to me. Technology. It'll come back to me. Well, it'll come back to me. But here's another question I wanted to ask: what do you think's up with the Iron Giant thing? Like you know, 200 years ago, it climbed the red line. So I do have like somewhat of a theory on this, but I'm curious what you think. That like either what the energy source is, or just like why it chose that time period to wake up and go do something. Like, what do you think's going on with that?
What we do know is that Mary Joie was the location of the former Lunarians, right? And Lunarians were put up on a pedestal as gods. So I kind of see these Iron Giants being similar to Pacifista, possibly programmed to defend gods of the world at that time. Problem is that they ran out of power. So there's some sort of unique power source that we're going to figure out at some point in time. Vegapunk, you know, dropped a clue about. So I kind of think that the Iron Giant got turned on in some way, and that will be important whenever we come to that reveal. But it's just simply, you know, the army of the gods at that time, before they were defeated by your Luffy-like Joy Boy character.
I 100% agree with that, and I'll build on by saying, you know, it was weird how 200 years ago specifically, that's when it woke up and went over there, and they noted how that was the same time period as like the fishmen. I forget there was like a name for it, but when they were joining the Reverie like 200 years ago. And I agree with everything you said, and I think the reason why it chose that time period specifically, like why all of a sudden it was 200 years ago, because if you think about it, the fishmen joining the world government is the worst thing possible, right? For the ancient kingdom. Then Poseidon is working with the government. Like that, they can't. That's like the biggest no-no, right? Like if there was one like self-defense mechanism you would want to put in place, it would be something that would stop the fishmen from working with the world government, right? Because then Poseidon's lost. Then you also don't have people on your side that have the one entrance to the new world, right? And there's also 2 poneglyphs. There's like a million reasons why you wouldn't want that to happen.
Plus the whole punk records, like in the past theory, so that still exists. It could be how the Iron Giant learned about this. And just think, like, look, that was the first time that Poseidon was literally in Mary Joie. So yes, there's other fishermen that were slaved, but perhaps Poseidon herself being there mattered. Like Mary Joie was under attack. But we're talking 200 years in the past, so it's obviously different, you know.
Poseidon is born every couple centuries, so now I'm almost wondering, was maybe a different Poseidon alive at that time? I haven't even thought about that.
Right. No, Princess Reverie is kind of the connection there that I have.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So, but we'll find out for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I did remember what I wanted to ask about Egghead earlier, and you mentioned how you want punk records to kind of like stay relevant in some way, like even after this, which I 1000% agree. What's almost like what's more valuable than punk records at this point, because you can replicate devil fruit powers and stuff with it, right? Like if you have that information, you're like it's crazy. And I think where this is all going to go is to Blackbeard, because he has Pudding, right? Pudding can literally look through punk records and pull out whatever, right? I think Pudding could also be used for like GARP, or there's a lot of other ideas like getting God Valley info or whatever. But you know, we just saw Blackbeard go and try to get Boa's fruit, and he was talking about how like it seemed like he wanted to reverse the stone factor on someone else. That was because that seems to be, it wasn't like explicitly said, but you know, she was like, I can't fix people in the past, like specifically, or like you can't use this fruit to, you know, undo other people, whatever it was. It seems like that might be what Blackbeard wants to do. And so part of me was thinking, well, if he couldn't get that fruit, if he just had all the Punk Records info, he'd probably figure out how to do that, or he could just control S-Snake and maybe have her use her powers to undo it and like test it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, maybe... you know another side idea that I have here is it's really interesting how History of the Void Century was lost. So if you're looking at potential devil fruit powers that could erase knowledge of a time period from, you know, potentially the whole world, you'd be looking at Pudding's powers. So that could be Blackbeard's end game there, where he's trying to essentially become king of the world, right? Replace Emu. So, you know, and then this time period that we're currently living in then gets erased from the memories of everybody.
That's such a crazy idea, because if you also compare it to like Parvision's like Joy Boy Records idea, like if at some point they did have every single person connected to the same brain, and then, you know, had like horrible wars and genocide and whatever, and then they just go and cut out the last 100 years because everyone's using the same memories, that would work, right? I mean, I guess the one issue with that, which I'm sure there's a way to think around it, but just what's what comes to my head is like there's like gaps in physical text as well. Like the Tentatas said, like they're like, our books, like I forget the exact verbiage is, but like our books essentially have a 100-year gap in them. Like 900 years ago, we have a bunch of history, then they stop, and then they pick up 800 years ago. So that's another thing where it's like, how would there be no history books, you know, if they were alive? But I mean, by the same token, they could have just, you know, all been enslaved or something, and it's just like that. Even them being enslaved was erased from their memory, right, or something like that.
Yeah, well, you definitely have to burn the books as well, which makes the poneglyphs important because it can't be just destroyed.
Right.
So you kind of need both.
Yeah.
I would feel like.
But you know, I will say a theory that I've had on this for a while, and I'm almost trying to like marry the ideas because I can already see a lot of ways to do it, and it's like kind of crazy. Is and I know it's gonna sound funny at first, but going back to all my Long Ring Long Land Davy backfight stuff, I think Foxy's fruit is really slept on. Not that Foxy himself is going to matter, or even the fruit necessarily, but the power itself, because he slows the velocity of things, right? And he even said it's an undiscovered light particle. So it's another form of light, like Kizaru's light. This is a different form of it, and it has properties, and it's undiscovered, which is like, I mean, if that's true, he only knows so much, but if that is true, Vegapunk hasn't discovered it yet either, and that was 2 years ago, so maybe he has, now that we see that he's doing holograms and all this stuff. So basically where this whole thought led me is like, if Emu, or even just the world government, has light powers and can get these lights that have weird properties, like can slow things down even though it's a light, which like is weird, then maybe they slowed the entire planet, right? Like they slowed the planet, so that would cause tidal waves originally, and the people couldn't move for a long time. They wouldn't know anything even happened. They'd just be frozen in time, basically, right?
Interesting. You know, I'm just curious as to like the scale of some of these devil fruit powers, like in game, how big is the sphere of influence? But just an island awakened. Just think about what Foxy's fruit could do to, you know, how would you interact within that bubble? Is an interesting thought to me. With like, say, the entire island is Foxy awakened. So then, would it seem like normal time to you within it because everything else is moving slower with you, and then you just would find perhaps Lafro Tale in this state? Would be insanely hype.
Oh wow, that's a crazy thing I haven't
The
thought about.
civilization there potentially as well, you know.
Wow. And yeah, in the part you said about like what would it be like if everything was frozen? Well, dude, that's like would you perceive it the same speed like as normal? Because like it all, you know, if everything is going slower, do you just perceive it almost the same? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's like such a weird. I don't know.
I hope we find out. It's basically my opinion there.
Same. And the reason why I think the lights could even be important and tied to Emu is you know, whenever Emu blasted Lelucia, there obviously is a big like light blast or whatever you want to call it, lightning, whatever it is, right? We don't know, I guess, but there were 16 beams on it, like 16 individual little beams coming down to form the big blast. And the traditional Japanese sun flag has 16 rays of light around it, right? So, you know, maybe reaching a little bit too far there. But I was like, well, like, if you think about it, like, if we're talking about the sun god, like Luffy and Joy Boy were the enemies of Emu, it seems like, and that's the sun god. It would be kind of fitting if Emu could control all kinds of light, like a true sun god would technically be able to, right? Because suns give light to the universe, so it would kind of make sense if like the sun god had to beat the guy who had sun god powers, I guess, you know what I'm saying? Like, because suns are also stars, right? Like, that's all they are, so it could be like star power also
Gorosei there, you know. It's
yes.
Another question is Emu trying to be the person of prophecy, right? So they have these, you know, sun god or whatever, so do you create technology to sort of become that, you know, or designate yourself in that way? You know, with the elder stars, the Gorosei, it makes you think about, you know, what was the conflict in the Void Century? What were the players and how did it turn out? What happened to Joy Boy? You know, is it the story that's been hinted already, or is it something more complicated?
Yeah, I you know, I have such a hard time reasoning like what happened. Like basically, how is Emu like who is Emu? That would be great to know. But like even just how did this all happen? You know, to begin with, like because if the Ancient Kingdom's so advanced, so you know strong, I would presume. Like if you look at Vegapunk's defenses, he has freaking automatic lasers and stuff that keep out you know Kaku, who's like not super impressive but pretty dang strong in One Piece. So it's like you know that's like really impressive. So how did the Ancient Kingdom even fall to begin with, right? Like how was there ever like a crack in the armor, and how was Emu the one who not only became leaders of these 5 Gorosei who have names based off planets, it seems like, at least one of them, but probably all of them, and also like the 20 strongest people in the world, families in the world, or most rich, or whatever they are, families in the world, most powerful, right? Like the Don Quixotes are like the only ones we really know of, but like what, like who could possibly beat Joy Boy, get all the rich families of the world together to align together, get these, you know, Gorosei who like seem to be shouldn't say seem to be extraterrestrial, but could be because they have names based off planets. It's like how, like what type of individual even has that potential, you know?
You know, I had a thought here as well. Like Joy Boy pulled a Roger, right? So what the world knows is that Roger was defeated and then executed, right? You know, he was captured.
Right.
It's kind of like how what the world knows, quote unquote, is that Joy Boy lost to the 20 Kingdoms, which went on to form the world government, you know? But the actual truth is that Roger was never defeated. He turned himself in. He did it on purpose. There was some sort of master plan there, and he was actually dying. I kind of think that Joy Boy was never defeated, and that he determined that the correct course was to, you know, basically turn himself in and reset the world. And it could relate to technology being a problem, you know, because that's one real interesting thing of the last 800 years is it was really advanced and then all the technology disappeared. Why did it disappear?
Right.
You know, it feels like maybe the main result of the Void Century was to get rid of that technology because that was not a good thing. And it wasn't until Vegapunk and now that it seems like the world's actually catching up to where it once was. So it's, you know, and then almost immediately government is targeting Vegapunk. I know in this chapter they talked about how it's because he was researching history or whatnot, but
right.
You know, it's they've gone out of their way to keep the world relatively primitive for a really long time.
Yep.
And enforce it by force. So
yeah,
I don't know. There's so many things here that we're making assumptions. I'm sure people are like trying to follow along, you know.
Hey, my I feel like most of my chatters are used to my craziness at this point, so they know they got to keep up with the you know, the tinfoil tinfoilness.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I love the idea that Joy Boy didn't actually lose. It could almost be that he just was like, man, you know, like the society we made is maybe not as good as we thought. Like maybe it does need a reset. Like I'll let someone else figure it out. Like I know that sounds like crazy, but I mean,
think about it. Like Joy Boy wins, he becomes king of the world. Imagine it's Luffy, realizes, wait a second, this isn't what I wanted. What happens when I'm the king now, and I'm not going to be the strongest forever, you know? And then it's a world ruled by strength. So what stops Blackbeard or Kaido or Big Mom from assuming the crown after me, right? So what do? You know, we make sure that whoever takes control after me has the ability to defend itself from my foils, basically.
So like, well, man, so you're saying like maybe Joy Boy almost didn't want
the world government.
Yeah, like he didn't want people to be as strong as him and like rule potentially the universe, honestly.
Pirates are the problem, right? And I think that there's context, you know, it's like, look, Luffy's a good pirate, we follow him, you know, but we see all the stories around, even the recent movie with Uda,
right?
Film Red, you know, it's just like, well, pirates are the reason why most people are having a bad time. And yes, we get the context of what the abused power, right? Celestial dragons, but still, pirates are the worst in general. Look at what Kaido did to Wano. Big Mom obviously has really good intentions and is not a totally evil character, you know, but she's stealing life of her citizens in order to be able to remain in the New World and be able to defend herself. And it's just, you know, you want to avoid all that. And for the most part, the world government has been able to do that. And it's a lot related to making sure that they hold the cards, like devil fruits, for instance. 800 years ago, they have most of them, you know, and somebody dies and slowly you lose, you know, corruption as well. Celestial dragons just giving devil fruits to slaves, for instance. But you know, and then you're just empowering the chaotic force, which is going to bring you down.
Right.
So
man, that's so crazy. This reminds me a lot of Hidden Islands video. I bet a lot of the people here have heard it before, but basically he surmises, I don't want to like summarize it too much because I'm going to make it sound crazy, but basically that kind of what you're saying, the government may be like almost like creating a limit on like the technological advances for protection reasons, right? Like it's almost like they, in a very twisted way, they're trying to protect the people from themselves in a way. And
we'll put it this way, right? What happens to this technology over time? Eventually goes to the pirate world. Like look at Frankie, for instance. Frankie is a pirate. You know, what is his design based on? You know, Vegapunk. Research, which he found, you know, and that's just how it would work in all things. What about a weapon? You know, let's say the world government just had a weapon, the lights, the 16 lights that came from the sky, you know, that's clearly some sort of big secret because they erase the island and you know, afterwards. So, you know, Emu doesn't want people to know about this, but let's say that they did, right? What would pirates do? Well, just like Crocodile and Pluton, they'd look for it, you know, eventually they'd get it, and the whole world is in danger.
That's so true. This might lead me to a new theory. This is like man, see, like in Hidden's video, he brings up this manga called The Music of Mary. Or I don't know if it's a manga, it's a graphic novel called The Music of Mary, basically. And basically, long story short, it's a world where like it used to be really technically advanced. They realized how dangerous it was. They reset the people, and then every like so many hundred years, a person's born who has the right to choose. Hey, do you want to keep making the world like, you know, like not technologically advanced, or do you want to let it go and let people do what they want to do? And, you know, like usually like over time people keep saying no, like I can see the dangers, I don't want people to, you know, find this, you know, get this level of intelligence and risk humanity and all that. But eventually someone does hit the button, right? Like they hit it and they're like, nah, like we don't want this defense mechanism anymore, let's see what happens. And I can see a lot of vibes with that into this. Like it's almost like Luffy's the one who, like, I mean, this would be, I don't know if this would be anticlimactic. I mean, Oda can definitely ball out with this, but it could be a scenario where Emu's like, all right, Joy Boy, so are you gonna kill me this time, or do you want me to keep ruling the world? It's like a weird thing where Luffy's like, what the hell are you talking about? Awesome. It's like, what the hell? Like, what? Who are you? What do you mean?
That would be a doom moment, in my opinion. You riffed it, right? So it kind of creates itself.
Yes. Yeah, it's a deep idea, but you really got my gears turning, man. Like, cause the that like Joy Boy not ever losing or losing to himself almost, because if you went and watched my Lafro Tale 2, which it's even longer than the first one, so don't feel like you have to, but there are a lot of meaningful additions there, and I'm, basically part of the theory is I think Onigashima could be Joy Boy's skull, but the afro isn't there, and that's what, and like it was kept somewhere else. Basically, it's gonna sound really crazy unless you watch it. I promise it doesn't. It's not as batshit insane as I make it sound, but it could be this situation where he almost cut off his afro and hid it somewhere because of how dangerous it was. Because again, you have to go watch the video. Everyone here is probably going to know what I'm talking about because I mentioned it a few times. But the afro probably has like the old punk records in it, or it connects you to the Joy Boy records that's the moon. Because if you go back to Gaimon in chapter 24, whatever it is, the one chapter with Gaimon, whenever he's showing us his past, it's literally like a movie in his afro. It zooms in on his afro and it shows the past as if it's like a movie within the afro, right? Like it's like I know it seems like really random, but then if you also think about punk records is like a brain and like people already connect to it, and like that's like his whole thing. And so I'm wondering, and also whenever they all went to Laugh Tale, like the Roger Pirates, I'm
not high enough.
They whenever the Roger Pirates went there, they immediately were like, we learned everything. The Void Century, the ancient weapons, what happened like with whatever, I forget all the terminology, but basically we learned everything. And Odin even learned stuff about the future, right? Like he knew in 20 years someone's gonna come and save everyone. Toki, if you're worried, just go 20 years in the future. Like it was just like he knew that was the time. Like he knew stuff was going to happen. And so I think the afro, or if it's not that, whatever the One Piece is going to give you that same kind of info. And it could be what we're saying. Like Joy Boy offered that up. Like, man, I don't want to make this decision. I'll let someone else get updated on everything I know by, because they can plug into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's almost confirmed because we didn't see Odin talk about 20 years in the future or anything in the future until after he visited Laugh Tale. Yep. So we'll get there, and no matter the form it's in, we'll get the prophecy of that'll become a thing. Like Luffy or Joy Boy is the person of prophecy, and certain events, even if they're not necessarily explained, and we don't know how that they're going to occur, they will occur.
Yep.
So it's a thing of interpretation.
Because if you think about it, right at the start of Egghead, Shaka knew or assumed he was going to die today, and you could almost piece together that like he's so smart, like he has so much information that he's just able to tell like the writing on the wall, right? Like he can almost, I mean, on some level it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it could also just be like he put all the pieces together and is like, because of the situation and I'm an expendable whatever, like he was able to piece together, I'm gonna die today specifically. And I kind of look at that like as like a mini version of what maybe could have happened to Odin. Like the Ancient Kingdom could have had so much information that they could literally predict the next 800 years, basically, right? Like because history repeats itself, maybe they have so much data, like from, thousands of years of history repeating itself over and over, and, how like people react and whatever it is, they're just able to tell, like, all right, well, Joy Boy, like if you want to do that, you just got to set these things up, and in 800 years, your will come back and have a chance to change it,
I like that theory, and something I've mentioned as well, like the whole Ragnarok thing. Oda's a big fan of Vikings. Clearly, Norse mythology is a big component of the story and will be particularly emphasized in Elbaf, which just happens to be probably the final major island that we get to before it's in-game, Lodestar and then Laugh Tale. So, but with Ragnarok, that's all about history repeating itself. The old gods die and are replaced, and the world gets slightly better each time it burns. And it just works perfectly with, I guess, some of the formatting that Oda has done with history in the One Piece world, particularly with the 800 years Void Century, and now with technology coming back just like it was before. And it just, yeah. So.
Yep. And like I think one potential, like, I don't know if it's evidence, but one idea that could connect to this, I guess, is, exactly 400 years ago, Shandora was sent into the sky, and it happened like right when Nolan found it, right? And it's interesting because Noland was technically allied with the world government. He was like literally bringing world government people to Shandora, and it's like right before he was able to do that, it was sent into the sky. So it's like is it so big brain that like the ancient kingdom was able to like set up a thing like, hey, in 400 years we need to shoot Shandora to the sky because someone's going to find it, right? And they're going to tell the world government we can't let that happen. Kind of similar to the Iron Giant idea earlier with Poseidon. It's like is the like or it could even be a will thing. Like they have like a system that's like they can just like, I don't know if it sounds so weird, but like the Earth is alive or something, you know what I mean? Or it's just a giant. The Earth is a
More
machine.
creatures.
The Earth is a
giant
machine.
Turtle.
The Earth is a machine, right? Or something. But it's just like, it's almost like they pre-program stuff to like, all right, we got to make sure that in 800 years we get the result we want. So in order to do that, we're going to like set up these couple things along the way to help people kind of idea. Because it is kind of crazy that over 800 years, the world government doesn't have like every poneglyph. You know what I mean? Like, or at least most of them. Like, it's kind of weird to me that they probably do have some. You know, I bet you they do have some. But it's like almost like too perfect. Like, bro, 800 years and you haven't gotten any of the road poneglyphs, you know, for sure.
Yeah, I pushed this already, you know, but Joy Boy created the world government. Emu was his friend, maybe, you know, go to the Mary Joie, find a hat there, maybe Joy Boy's hat. Think differently about the context of the relationship there. Emu's in charge of protecting the world. The poneglyphs are the message Joy Boy left for somebody to find in the distant future. Why hasn't the world government messed with it? Well, you know,
they want them to find them, or like they
want it, or it's part of the plan, you know. So
man, see that, man, you really got my brain working, because like the potential's there, man, where it like so many things make sense with that idea. Like, and I guess I would just want to know how it ends, but I mean, man, how crazy would it be if Emu is like, hey, Luffy or Joy Boy, we're like, it'd be a longer story than this, but hey, we're actually friends and we're gonna work together. But like Blackbeard is trying to beat me, right? Like
Blackbeard is the Blackbeard endgame villain is how that would work. Yep.
And then
or Emu goes off the rails, you know, and after 800 years of leading the world decides, you know what, I changed my mind. It would also work as well. And just loses his mind.
Man, man, I like that might be like a whole theory video in and of itself, man. Like that's crazy, because it's just going to the Straw Hat. Like, it makes so much sense. Like, why would you like? I mean, there's some other potential answers, but it does answer the Straw Hat thing. Yeah. Like, oh, they're saving it.
The door's open. That's how I feel about that.
Man, that's that's a beefy theory, man. That I got to think about that. Real quick, I want to get to a couple super chats, but then we're gonna get back into that, or probably, because my mind is still kind of blown. But
sorry.
That's why I brought you on, man. Your Joy Boy theories. Like, actually, before I read the super chats, I do want to say, I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning, but like I've told Parvision this a bunch of times, where like before I got into YouTube, like watching Parvision give I guess what I would say are more open-minded theories, it like made me feel more welcomed. You know, I was like, oh, now I feel like I can go say some stuff and I won't get like a million dislikes, you know, like, okay, like there is an audience for it, I guess.
It depends on how you do it, though. Parvision has a very unique talent.
Yes, he does. But in my opinion, you were the original, man. Like, you were the one, like, back in the day, like, like, when I first started, it was like you, Tekking, Rogers Base, King of Lightning, and probably a couple other guys, but those are like the main four I watched when I first got into One Piece, which was like 2017-ish. And I remember there's like reasons why I would watch each of you, you know what I mean? Like King of Lightning has amazing reactions, still does today. Rogers Base too, honestly.
Infectious laugh.
And I mean, Tekking is just like, if you just want to hear about One Piece all the time, you know, like good, just whatever thought, like he has every video on everything. It's like, you can go to Tekking, you're going to get that information. So like everyone has their own like, you know, angle that I love about them. And for you, it was always like, okay, I'm ready for like I want to hear like stuff nobody else is talking about. You know what I mean? That was basically it. Like, I want to hear the angle that nobody else is saying, or like the more open-minded take, because I mean, Oda's like an open-minded guy. Like, he does a lot of crazy stuff that like it's hard to predict a lot of what Oda's doing. You know what I mean? Like, anyone who gives like sometimes it's the basic answer, but a lot of times it's a crazy answer that, you know, like something we would have never guessed. So I love hearing the open-minded stuff. So like probably from day one, that was why you were one of my most watched guys, probably.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I never really considered myself to that level. Like at the time that I first joined YouTube, there was like Anime Fan Talk, I think, and Flying Panda.
Yep.
They had more, I would say, open-minded theories than me, because the way that you do theories is kind of individual based on what you want from them. Some people really like idea creation, so it's not necessarily important whether it's likely. Or if it even makes sense yet. If it seems cool, then people like those ideas. And a lot of people hate those kinds of theories, but that happens sometimes. Like they end up being correct just based on the simple premise of it's cool.
Yep.
But with me, it was always important that I predict what it is that I think could actually happen, because that's where so it's about marrying those ideas. Is come up with something new that nobody's talking about, or it's not prevalent, make an argument for something that people don't like, they dislike, or they don't have preference for, and it's always been like a best part of my channel and the worst part of my channel, because I think the way that it works is if you're constantly arguing for things that people don't already believe, it's like an uphill battle all the time.
Yep.
And you'll win some and you'll lose some, and overall everyone feels like, well, it's hit or miss. And that's kind of been my experience, but that's what drives me. Like I kind of think that I have a teacher mentality, and I have an idea and I want to teach it, and make it make sense, I guess. So
no, you definitely do, man. Like I said, I loved watching your chapter reviews, but I almost liked watching the responding to comments more, because it was like, I don't know how to put it, but it was almost like we were in class, and it was like someone would like pose an idea, and you would you would never like talk down to the idea, but it would be like maybe the comment was like sounded like a good idea, and you'd be like, well, we got to remember this, and like, but it could lead here, and it was just like we got little pockets of like kind of seeing your brain work, I guess, like around an idea, and that was like, for me, that really, it sounds like kind of weird, but like it almost like taught me how to theorize a little bit, or in One Piece, like, okay, if I want to make a theory on this, I got to remember like these key things. Like those were like some of my favorite videos, man. I watched those religiously. So
but I try not to be biased, but inevitably fail every single time, but it's how, it's like how you view a certain panel or a certain mystery vastly determines the rest of whether something is plausible around it. And it's like, well, I try to have a reason for everything at the very least, even if you don't agree. Like, look, I have my reason. I should really get back to doing those comments videos, because it's just a different environment, rather than preaching. You can respond directly to people in a way, and sometimes even mention things that you wouldn't have on your own. Another thing that I really dislike is hating on theories. I'm just not about that. And people can do whatever they want to, but it's like if the idea makes sense to you and you like the thought of it, then just go with it. But what the comments video did is, it's like, well, look, I have to argue for what my perspective is on what you're saying, and in some respects counter. So it's almost like disagreeing in the softest way possible, which is just a different. I don't know.
No, I totally get that. It's I feel the same way too. Like sometimes someone will like bring me an idea, and I in my head I'm like, okay, like I don't agree, but it's not that I think it's wrong. It's just I don't want to sound like I'm gatekeeping or that they're wrong, but I need, like, there's a way to respond where it's like yeah, you disagree, but you can also maybe build on it a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like it is kind of a thing, and it's also, I think, in One Piece, as time goes on, you start to get partial to theories. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's hard for me to consider or to side with any other theory about Pluton than Pluton's a mole, even though I could be completely wrong. It's just like whenever I hear another theory, it's like, man, okay, I gotta take it out of my mindset like real quick. Like I gotta like respond neutrally. You know what I mean? But then sometimes there are some iffy ideas that maybe just need to be said or are a little iffy. But
Zoroko's kind of.
Oh, bro, ZK, don't get me started. We don't even. I had JD on here a couple weeks ago, and that's what we were. that ZKK, just Wano stuff, a lot of funny stuff. No ZKK. I had someone recently trying to tell me about that, and I was like, man, it's 2023. I can't.
I disagree.
Yeah, I was like, I just can't. Like, if he comes back and it happens, fine. Like, great. That it's not worth my time anymore. Okay, I want to get through a couple super chats because I am a little behind, but I do want to give everyone a heads up. We are going to be ending the stream in about 20 minutes or so. So if you want to get any final chats or anything like that, now is the time. And then once this is over, I wish YouTube let me like raid people like on Twitch, but after this, everyone should definitely go check out Hidden Island's channel because he's starting his reaction for chapter 1078 like right now. So right after this, definitely go check that out. But Lord Vegeta became a member. Bro, I appreciate you. Vegeta, I see you everywhere, so it means a lot to have you as a member on the channel. Mr. Bushido super chatted 10 euros earlier and said, Atlas is a traitor. She used a hologram and changed her body like she said she could do 3 chapters ago. York was with Frankie. He could see her leave, not being stoned, and Atlas is leading Robin to York. P.S. Chapter 1080 Carrot shows up. Carrot's been in every chapter, or at least the Great Value Carrot, the one that's the random rabbit girl that's in Egghead. I don't know who she is, but as for everything else,
Great Value.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking to, the Walmart brand. There's like a rabbit in every yes. But I do want to get your thoughts on what he was saying earlier because I think Par was talking about this yesterday too, where Atlas is leading Robin to the basement right now. And that's obviously where York is and all the stuff is going on. And it's like, Robin's like the most wanted person for the world government, like that the Straw Hats have. I mean, other than maybe Luffy now, I don't know. But Robin's obviously important. And it's like, could, maybe like Atlas just got healed real quick. What if Atlas was just a hologram this whole time? Like York made, maybe like killed Atlas, but made a hologram to replace her or something. This is like super 5D chess, but basically what if that is like that Atlas we see is a York accomplice one way or another, and they're leading Robin to the basement for that purpose. That's how she's going to become a celestial dragon, is like trade in Robin.
To go back to our thoughts, or my thoughts about 1078, it's good but not great, right? So but we still there's room for it to become great, and what you need to do is you need to make add layers essentially. So
yes.
Even if Atlas isn't a hologram, what if like I don't know, like the Dark Knight, right? The Batman movies where you start off at the very beginning with Joker in the mask. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And how the plan was to rob the bank and everyone slowly killed themselves. So maybe York's plan is to kill Atlas when she arrives, but there's a But anyway, that's really specific. But just add things to it. Could be really cool. It could absolutely be a hologram. I wanted more from that in the story, to be honest with you. Like you have these holograms that are around. That's interesting by itself. But Atlas's job is literally to fight them for some reason. And then you have that wall that they entered when we first met the Jinbei Seraphim, where it was like solid. They passed through it and then they turn back around to get back through and it becomes solid again. And it's like, well, why can't you do that with holograms, or what is that technology? I don't even know.
Yep.
It's so much potential there. I just wonder whether this is just background that we're not supposed to think too much about, like Oda was just trying to create a very futuristic sciencey thing and not necessarily utilize it, but it could be.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiment that like if Oda could add a lot of layers here to make this like super interesting, and I think holograms is definitely the way. Remember when Atlas said like what's living and not was settled a long time ago, or something to that effect, right? Like are holograms living things or not? Well, like I know the answer, but you got to figure that out yourself. And it's like, what? And I just
the whole desire speech, comes up today. So, basically be wary of anything that Oda put out there.
And like the voice of all things, and like devil fruits have wills, swords have like personalities and all that. It's like inanimate objects are like alive in One Piece. Like maybe not alive, like sentient, like, or they're a sentient but not alive. Like they're not breathing, even though they have the breath of all things. But you know what I mean? Like there's a will in like everything. And I think like a hologram, it like once you make the hologram, it would be a lot. I'm sure that's going to be the lesson, is that holograms are alive. I'm sure like that's how it's going to end, is that like all these things are living things in some form or fashion. And it makes me wonder, like, we haven't seen much on that, but we do know that Vegapunk is getting taken out supposedly for all of the Void Century stuff that he knows. But it is weird that on like the very first page in Egghead, we saw them punching a hologram. right? They like built gloves that could punch a hologram, and it's like, these are the phonetic gloves. You can punch light with these. And that's actually what led me down the emu light idea that I mentioned earlier, or part of it at least, because I was like, wait. Vegapunk just now figured out how to punch light. Like, what if Emu is just made of light? Or what if Emu is a hologram and nobody's been able to hit, like, even with hockey and stuff, nobody's been able to hit him, and that's why, like, this is such a big deal.
That's a full-on Yellow Brick Road, the Wizard of Oz theory right there. That's really interesting that Emu, the king within the castle, is just a hologram. That is really interesting. You know, on the thought of like life, holograms being life as well, just programming in general is really interesting. This is a thing that commonly comes up in sci-fi, you know, but like, you know, our genetic code, DNA, right, lineage factors in One Piece is not too much different than ones and zeros programming for, you know, computers. So, you know, with those holograms, what determines what they do as they move around? Well, it must be some sort of, you know, same thing, lineage factor DNA in its own form. So with Emu, you know, is it a very complicated version of that? Would be fascinating.
Yeah, I you know, like I said, I don't know. I have like a million different Emu theories, but I have such a strong feeling that this hologram stuff is gonna matter, because it's just like, I guess one other thing that ties into this is Blackbeard said his fruit can like pull in everything, even light. Like he explicitly said, my fruit even works on light itself. And so that's like, okay, whoa, like the main antagonist has powers that work on even just regular light. And it's like, well, if Emu is a hologram or whatever, maybe Rox found out Emu was a hologram, and that's why Blackbeard has been searching for that fruit specifically, is because whatever happened between him and Rox, because there's some connection, Blackbeard might know that he needs that fruit in order to beat Emu, right? Like that's the only way to beat someone made of entirely light, because they're not even real technically. So there's a lot of potential there. A lot of potential.
Tinfoil.
Yeah, a lot of tinfoil. I got to go to the grocery store and get a lot of rolls of tinfoil
for protection.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna get through a couple more super chats. Juna super chatted €2.49. Yeah, 49 euro cents, whatever they are. By the way, those boxers on the screen ain't doing nothing. I know the boxers I got on the back of the screen here are pretty bad at boxing, to be honest. They go for 3 hours and don't even hit each other once. Friend Harper super chatted $10 and said, mini Blackbeard theory. The first fruit he ate had a whole personality with no powers, but ancient knowledge instead. Told Blackbeard about the Yami fruit and how devil fruits respawn. This personality has Whitebeard's devil fruit. So that is interesting. I'll say this. I do like the idea that Blackbeard had a fruit even before the dark fruit. I'm not 100% sure, but I like where that's going, because that just, I don't know, he had to scar Shanks somehow. That's kind of legit, but
True, yeah.
But I do like the idea that some will influenced him, that like as a kid, and that's what set him on this path. Like I see Blackbeard a lot like I see Orochi. Like, you know, Orochi was twisted as a child, and also he got the Orochi fruit, which like has like 8 heads, right? 8 heads, and Blackbeard has the 8 crossbones on his flag, right? So it's like there's already kind of a connection there. So I can see him being influenced.
It's the parallels are everywhere. You know, with Orochi, he was set on a path by former members of Rox, probably, or connections with Rox.
Right.
So, you know, with Blackbeard, same as he's a kid, you know, Whitebeard was actually a member of Rox as well, but, you know, and you wonder if he's been experimented on, weird body, things like that.
Yep. I think Blackbeard and Kuma are going to be from the same race. I think that's going to be where that goes, because remember, because Kuma was like from a special race, and he also has been tested, like devil fruit stuff has been tested on him, so it's like a perfect segue. Like Blackbeard has multiple, this guy's getting tested for devil fruit stuff, like makes a lot of sense. Brandon King super chatted $5 and said the Straw Hats install a mini Egghead egg on their ship with all of Vegapunk's knowledge, so it's a beacon, inheriting his dream. It would be their Roger's egg. Okay, well, I was like, my brain was like kind of thinking of like all the potentials, and then the second you said it would be their version of Roger's egg, I love it. I mean, I would have to almost wonder how this is gonna, like, how that would work as far as like, I mean, that could be like how Frankie starts getting high-tech stuff is he can just use Punk Records to get Vegapunk level brain stuff. You know what I mean? Like, what if they keep Egghead and Vegapunk's himself goes to like Blackbeard or something to that? I don't know.
It's literally called Egghead. So, Roger's egg is a thing. There has to be some answer to that. I also like the weather egg idea as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like so you open up and create a storm. D's bring a storm with them could be fitting as well.
Ooh, it could be like Nami could do it, like make whatever weather she wanted too. Remember that? How they said they can control the weather? And it's like Nami would really be able to, like, it doesn't matter what the weather is anymore. And also, oh my God, wow, so many connections.
It's relevant in Egghead as well because they're literally altering the climate because it's supposed to be a winter island.
And dude, oh my, okay, so remember in the Ed War how like Roger had the egg on his ship, and there was like a big storm that came and it like wiped out half of Shiki's fleet, and then like we didn't see all the explicit stuff, but that's what they said. There's like a storm came and then Roger escaped or whatever. Well, right now we saw like the future a little bit where the Sunny is going towards like all these world government officials, and they're even like, the world government was disquieted by the situation. It was just a lone ship approaching them or whatever. And it's like, bro, like, what if we're doing Ed War Part 2? Or it's Egg War this time, right? I always thought that was weird how Ed War is, like, so close to Egg. It's 2 Ds, like, it's so close to Egg War. And what if this is going to be like Ed War 2 or Egg War, where we have that and it creates a storm to protect us, essentially? You know,
there is not enough One Piece fights on water. It's a pirate story. So yes, I really, really hope so. I hope that, just like as a prediction for Egghead here, I hope that they manage to escape in time. They leave the island, but then it becomes a naval battle.
Please. Dude, that's actually one of my favorite parts about the Kid fight is Kid's out at sea right now, so he's gonna have to fight like an actual pirate, you know what I mean? Like, because he's trying to approach someone's island. Like, bro, we never see that where like a pirate's approaching another territory and they're like, you're not coming to this territory, and it's like oh, like hell yeah I am, you know what I mean? Like,
well, even more than that as well. Like the Sunny is the most advanced ship on the planet, basically, is the impression that we have, right? So like, utilize it.
Yes.
In a naval combat would be incredible.
Yes. Oh man. Oh yeah. I have one more big idea to tell you about the about this Sunny situation. I just want to get to these last couple super chats, but then we'll end on this point I want to tell you. It's my theory for where this is going after chapter 1078. I've been saving it. I think you're gonna like it. But real quick, Young Usopp super chatted $5 and said, 1, Joy Boy is a clown. The afro makes people laugh with Gear 5. Buggy's nose has some relations to Joy Boy's too. Great stream fellas, 2 legends. Man, Young Usopp, that's crazy. I can't believe I've never even thought about that. Like, clowns have rainbow afros and like clown noses, and Buggy is obviously like a parallel to Luffy where he fails upward, but whatever. And he has a clown nose, bro. That's crazy. Young Usopp, that's crazy.
Direct descendant.
That's, I mean, hey. Or Brooke. I think Brooke has a good chance too.
Oh yeah.
Man, the music vibes. But yeah, Buggy too. I mean, honestly. And then Terrible TJ super chatted $2 and said, oh, and there's another one. Hold on. Super chatted $2 and says, Straw Hats take a chunk of Vegapunk's brain. Or what if Luffy shrinks it? Right? He can shrink it to a normal size with his awakening. It's like, oh, hey, if this is too big to take, we'll just make it smaller, like a normal egg. Hey, honestly.
Pretty good.
Yeah, man, the idea of Egghead being the new egg on his ship is, oh my god, that is beautiful. And then last super chat, unless someone really wants to, but we do need to end the stream here in a few minutes. But Andrew Baldy super chatted $5 and said, Usopp will get tricked by Loki and jeopardize the Straw Hats. Usopp will defeat Loki by himself and become a brave warrior of the sea. Nice Water 7 parallel. That is... I haven't even thought about Loki whatsoever, to be honest with you, but that's a good way of tying it together where Usopp basically works with Loki to jeopardize the Straw Hats, but then beats him by himself in return. There's a lot that has to happen in Elbaf, so it's like between Kid and potential Big Mom stuff and this, like I don't know how that would all happen, but I love that just for like Usopp proving himself, like beating the big bad all by himself for once. I like that. That would work.
We'll see. I'm so hesitant to speculate too much about Elbaf. First off, because I expect to be there soon, and secondly, We just don't have a whole lot to go off now, so it feels like a situation where like individually you just run wild because it could be the case.
Exactly, unless it's like related to Kid versus Shanks specifically, because we know that's going to happen. I don't like it's not that I don't like them. It's like I'm gonna like all of them, so I don't want to even talk about it because I'm gonna fall in love with like every theory. And then the very last one for today, 3-day trip, became a member for 3 months. Thank you very much, 3-day. I appreciate you. 3-day keeps things running in the background here. Great stream, Dak and Joy Boy. Thanks for all the fun chats and content. Much love to you both. Thank you so much, 3-day. I appreciate you for your support. Give me one more sec. Okay, I think I got all of it. So the last thing I want to talk about and just bounce off you a little bit is a potential for Bonnie as it pertains to the end of Egghead here. Because I was on the phone with my friend yesterday and we kind of brewed up a little theory and I've kind of fallen in love with it. So basically, you know how we saw Bonnie crying profusely, presuming that she's got all the memories from Kuma or whatever from that bubble? Well, if that is true and she knows everything from that bubble, then she probably knows why Vegapunk and the Straw Hats need to escape. Like, Kuma's been helping the Straw Hats for years now, right? So she's probably going to learn, like, oh my god, I didn't know how important all this was. I was treating Vegapunk like trash when he actually, like, was really helping my dad, blah, blah, blah. She probably knows all that. And so I think a couple things are going to happen. One, you know, she's going to wake up and want to help everyone just because of this generally. She's going to stop hating Vegapunk like she's been doing this whole arc. But I think the trauma could also make her awaken her fruit, and that could be how we get out of here and what this whole situation is. Because remember, her fruit is more about... I know a lot of people have like not really like the way I phrase this, but I don't know how else to phrase it. It's more about timelines than ages per se, right? It's like yes, she can age you up and down, but she can also choose like which timeline that is, right? She's made
parallel universes.
Yeah, she made herself buff, right? Like that to me, I was like, okay, like it's not age anymore. Like it's all sorts of stuff.
Right. Well, Oda also does in the SBS like good future, bad future.
Yes,
you know, and she does the same thing as well.
And think about this. We just saw how the Straw Hat ship is approaching all these government ships with Saturn, Kizaru, all these other government agents. And it was specifically said how disquieted they were by the situation. Like, basically, this is really weird. Like, why is just the Straw Hat ship coming at us? Like, they're gonna die. You know, like that. Like, that's the vibe I get. Like, this is so ominous. But what if it's because Bonnie awakens her fruit, and that literally, like, warps the current timeline to the timeline she wants? So instead of stabbing someone and changing the timeline that they exist in, like, she stabs Vegapunk, like, hey, you're young, you're young in this timeline now, like, whatever. Her awakening...
Does that make Bonnie's fruit like a fate fruit? It's really interesting.
Almost, and I wonder what the downside is, because I'm sure there's going to be a cost. Like, maybe every minute she has her awakening on, she loses like a month of her life or something. She has a lot of Big Mom vibes. Remember, Big Mom took soul and like, give me a 1 month of your soul to live here for a year type thing. So I almost feel like that could be what's going on. But basically what I think could happen is she makes the current timeline the one timeline where the Straw Hats escape successfully, and so that's why we see them sailing out like they're not worried. It's like they know for a fact that like, hey, like with the timeline we're in right now is the one where we escape. Like with Hawkins tarot cards, how he would like, there's a 2% chance I survive.
So absurdly broken. That's my initial thought to that. Like, you got to be careful with that. Obviously, you need a major downside to that, like Law, for instance, using his fruit and dying.
Yes.
I'm not saying to that level, but yeah, I mean, that is absurdly powerful. My thought on Bonnie actually was related to Kuma. You know, it's like we know that the creations, the Pacifista, and the Sea Beast retain some memories,
right,
within their lineage factors of their former selves. So that's how I saw her playing the biggest role, is with Bear and with the Pacifista. But you know, holy shit, if her, you know, and I could see it if you do the whole timeline thing. I mean, maybe. And I would just, it's strong though.
Yeah, and here's, I guess, 2 caveats I maybe should have even started with. Is one, the reason why I think Bonnie is a really strong answer for just being the solution for us escaping is because her dad is who saved us in Saba Odi, right? And there's all sorts of Saba Odi parallels here, which, I mean, Kizaru's showing up. Kizaru's showing up. She might realize, like, oh my god, my dad has been protecting these people for so long because of X, Y, and Z. I need to do the same, or else all of that was for naught, right? Like, if I don't save them, then my dad died for nothing kind of deal, right? And so that's
excellent point.
And,
you moved a mountain right there with me with just that connection, the parallel there.
Yeah, that's
Kuma and Bonnie.
That's the meatiest part. Like in the timeline stuff is kind of crazy, but I guess the Kuma stuff shows Bonnie's gonna be the solution, right? That's like whatever she learned from that bubble is gonna tell her what she needs to do, and the trauma is gonna maybe help her awaken the fruit so she can do it. Now we're talking about maybe she has to give up lifespan or whatever. I think another caveat is she can only make parallel universes or whatever that actually exist, right? Like if there is no parallel universe or no timeline or whatever it is where they escape, then she can't do it, right? Like if it's a 0%.
Oh, hold on. Rewind. Okay, what gears are turning? So Bonnie's fruit seems to mainly apply to living beings right now, right? Like she ages and youths, I guess, people, but like awakenings we know affect the environment, right?
Yes.
So like what if for instance you have we got it started in this arc with a water spout, right? So you create a future for a patch of water where a water spout appears.
Oh, and you're like, dude, wait, like the warm eddy round 2, is that what you're saying?
Right, but her powers. Yeah, so like fate-related fruit, age and youth things, but basically like change the timeline that it's on. So rather than apply it to people, apply it to the environment. So that, if there's a event that's going to occur, like the mountain falls or there's a tsunami suddenly or whatever it might be, that's typically how awakenings have been defined, is with environment. So
yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Paramecia fruits especially, right? Like they like that's like it's like temporary effect on the environment, and it seems to be a really like I don't want to say wishy-washy, but very inconsistent thing too, right? Like Luffy's seem to be pretty standard, which is funny because he has a zone, which I have a video coming out about that. But he affected the environment like Paramecias do. He made the ground rubber, but he also made Kaido rubber, which is like not that normal, right? And then but then you look at like Law and Kid, and they had very different awakenings, right? It affected other people's bodies and the environment sort of, but like I mean Law's Kroom is like it's almost like a good embodiment of how crazy his fruit is. It's like a million different things, right? So yeah, I could see Bonnie's being something really unexpected, and I love the idea like imagine if they're going towards those ships because they know that a giant ball of water is about to like shoot out of the ocean and grab all the ships, so they're not worried. They're like, in 2 seconds you're all about to be in the water anyway. Like they just don't care.
Yeah, but anyway, without getting into specifics here, just the idea that Bonnie is the key, which is kind of what I already believe anyway. And how that parallels with Kuma, with this arc resembling Sabaody to the extent that it is. With major incident is occurring, Straw Hats do something that the government doesn't want, punch a celestial dragon, save Vegapunk, Kizaru, Sentomaru, now the Gorosei are showing up. It's just I would take more of Sabaody as well. Not that I think that's going to happen, but I would take it. Yeah,
same. And I guess one other thing is, remember, Sabaody was all about bubbles, and the warm eddy is like a bubble of water that came out of the ocean, and that's where we found Bonnie. So just there's I agree with you that it's just the Bonnie connection. Also considering Kuma's climbing the red line right now at the same time, right? Like we see all these things kind of juxtaposed. So I can see all that kind of coming together where Bonnie kind of fulfills Kuma's will as he dies, kind of deal, that kind of thing. So, but what's exciting is that we're all here to get to watch it as it's happening. That's only once in a lifetime will we get to do that. So Joy Boy, thank you so much for coming on the stream. We do have to end it, but do you have any parting words or anything you'd like to plug before the stream ends?
Oh man, I'm really bad at this. So Joy Boy Theories, I have a YouTube channel. Feel free to check it out. I'm going to cover One Piece all the way to the end, but absolutely my focus right now is on my book. If you guys want to check out my book, in every video that I upload in the description as well as pinned in the comments, you'll find a link tree where you can find both the Booms Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 2 released today. Doesn't mean anybody actually read it today because it's being shipped out, I assume. But it's really inconsistent, self-publishing, so it kind of works in weird ways. But if anyone wants to check that out, it would be amazing. I've really poured a lot of work into it, and that's been my focus and been really rewarding for me. But yeah, so my book, my channel, that's what I have to plug. Appreciate being here.
And definitely go check it out, guys, for sure. I mean, go check out his channel for sure if you like One Piece, but if you want to check out the booms, I definitely recommend it. I'm only like a fourth or the fifth the way through, but I definitely am gonna read the whole thing. I enjoy it, and that's not just because he's here. I buy books all the time, so it's not that abnormal. So
I read.
Yeah, I read. It's not just gonna go on a shelf. I do read normally things other than One Piece, but I still do need to go read the Ace novels, though. I'll say that I've been slacking. But anyways, everyone, thank you so much for the super chats and just chatting and being here. It was really amazing. And as I always say, we're only going to have this chance one time to talk about chapter 1078 before chapter 1079 comes. It's it's going to keep happening until we don't have anything to react to at all. So it's a special time to be here, guys. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. And everyone, go check out Hidden Island. He's streaming his chapter reaction for 1078. Don't spoil him if he's not done. He might be done now. I don't know yet, but definitely go check out Hidden Island. So